Jams in parkour are not made with fruit, they're made with people. Okay, that sounded a lot more sinister than I expected. A jam is another word for a gathering or a meetup. Informal training sessions that were all the rage in the first 10 years of the sport's worldwide existence. People would travel across the country, across continents, every week, every month, every year to attend these events, to meet new people and just have an amazing time training in a new location. But in the early 2010s, something changed. The community's attitude towards these events shifted, and these large-scale popular jams that had been a huge part of the sport and left all the attendees with long-lasting happy memories started to dwindle like dying stars. But why is this? Well, let me tell you. Parkour was founded in 1980s France by a group of young men who treated it as an expansion of their childhood games. In 2003, members of that group brought parkour to London and performed various feats on the rooftops of some of London's most famous landmarks. In 2005, they returned for the sequel, Jump, Britain, where not only were the founders' skills showcased, but the documentary dived into the lives of some of the most prominent parkour practitioners in the UK at that point. Both films are known to have had a huge effect on the rise of parkour in Britain and across the world in the early 2000s, but here's the thing, they were only ever shown on TV. Back then, social media wasn't really a thing, and the internet wasn't as fast or reliable as it is nowadays. Most people in the parkour community found out about each other by simply meeting out on the street or through forums, online discussion sites where people could post questions, statements, photos, and later videos to spark up conversations. It was a slightly more civilized version of social media, and it was through these forums that jams began to be organized. The term jam stepped away from its roots in fruit and preserves in the 1930s, when it was used by jazz musicians to describe a group of people playing random riffs and melodies all at once. This later expanded to the wider music scene, where musicians would meet up and jam out. One person would start playing an instrument, then someone else would join in, and someone else would join in, and they'd keep going until everyone was playing their instruments or singing, no sheet music, no backing track, nothing, just a unique sound that was completely made up. The first recorded evidence of the term jam being used in a parkour sense was in 2002 when Romain Duet hosted one in France with around 12 people in attendance. Jams were all-day or multi-day free parkour meetups that came in two forms, regular small jams and large irregular jams. The small ones were usually weekly with a pretty decent turnout at each one. Attendees would meet in a certain location within a city and then just spend the entire day traveling around the different spots in that area, jumping on various walls and railings. There was a boom of this type of jam between 2003 and roughly 2007-2008, mainly off of the hype of the Jump documentaries, but it didn't die off then. The large jams were less regular, but still a fairly common occurrence. These would usually have some form of structure to them, be it a group warm-up, workshops, a conditioning session, or a cheeky little roof mission at the end of the day. Notable large-scale jams at this time include the Family 3-Run Jams in London between 2008 and 2011, Trace Gathering 2007, which was held entirely in nature, the Aberdeen Spring Jam in 2012, and the Storm Free Run London Jams in 2014 and 2015. Although weekly jams would attract people from across the country, the large jams would attract people from across the world. But regardless of the size and the activities that went on, each jam held a special place in each attendee's heart. They got to travel, meet people who would go on to be their lifelong friends, beyond the parkour bubble. The opportunity to test out their weird and wacky ideas with other like-minded individuals, at a time when no one outside the community actually understood the sport. Jams gave individuals a sense of belonging, as it's commonly noted that parkour attracts the weird outcast kids. But if jams brought vast amount of smiles, happy memories, and ride or die friendships, then why did they vanish? Okay, well yes, jams still do happen, but why did this particular structure of jam disappear, and why have jams as a whole become less regular? The simple answer is that it's all to do with the progression of the sport. There you go. That's all you wanted. Leave a like, hit subscribe, maybe leave a comment, clear off. If you'd like a more in-depth look, then let's start with a theory courtesy of Adam Dorr. People didn't enjoy training parkour this way. And by that I mean the intense conditioning side. Because in the early days, parkour was viewed as a discipline, not a sport, not an art form. These early rise, late finish, sometimes very intense jams filled with endless amounts of press-ups, pull-ups, quadrupedal movement, other conditioning exercises, was only for a certain breed of practitioner, primarily those that started between 2003 and 2007. Current practitioners may seem very lazy and less dedicated than those who were there in the beginning, but I think it's just the fact that parkour training in general is much less intense than it once was. There are now so many branches to the parkour style tree, whereas in the early days you were either the disciplined ones or the undisciplined. There wasn't really anything else to it. This shift in training style was bound to affect most of the events. The rise of coaching was another cause of the downfall of parkour jams. At this point in time, classes and coaching wasn't as big of a deal as it is now. Most people were self-taught from watching forum videos, reruns of the Jump series, or just by going out and training with other people. However, as the instruction of parkour became more common and in some cases monetized, those who had set up the weekly jams decided to give coaching a shot. But as they were in full-time work or full-time education, they would only be able to run these classes on the weekends, when the jams were. There were also instances of parkour jams and outdoor classes clashing because they would want to use the same spots. This was one of the biggest factors in Scotland as to why the weekly jams completely died out, because those that attended or ran them started running classes, which reduced the jam numbers, and those that remained didn't really want to travel across the country to train with the same 2-3 people every single week. The rise in larger, more organised pay-to-enter jams in the mid-2010s, and later on the introduction of competitions, affected both jam styles, numbers, and formats across the globe. If you have limited time and money, and you have the choice to grab a train ticket every single weekend to a regular jam in a local town, or save up for a couple of weeks, couple of months, to buy a ticket to a 3-day entirely indoor parkour event with purpose-built equipment and the chance to meet and train with some of your parkour idols and heroes, most people would choose the latter, whether that's a pay-to-enter jam like Fortnum or a competition like Project Underground. Despite parkour competitions being a controversial topic for many years, they are now essential in the modern-day parkour culture. If you'd like to see my full opinions on competitions and why they actually work, I'll have a link at the end of this video for you. But in short, parkour competitions are community-first events. There's no toxicity or bravado amongst competitors, even at the highest of levels, because they all know that at the end of the day, they're there because they love their sport. Competitions and jams go hand in hand nowadays, with only a few events being entirely competition-free. Now, there are obviously other contributing factors as to the change in jam regularity. Things like the cost of living crisis, COVID-19, individuals growing up, starting families, and of course that stupid office scene have had a huge impact on parkour events over the last few years. So what is the structure of a modern day jam? Well, it varies as it always does. Some cities, if they have a prominent university parkour scene, will have weekly training sessions, much like Edinburgh. These days usually start at 11 AM, with the majority of people having arrived by 12. These will then go on until 4, with maybe a few other people staying out a little later if they feel like it. This style is very reminiscent of the old school jams, just shorter and much less intense than those disciplined jams. As I said previously, most jams now have a competition attached to them or vice versa, but there are still some competition-free events that have a lot more to offer than the old school ones ever did. Take the street media socials, for example. At the recent third installment, which was a 3-day event, they not only had the informal training side of things, but had a raffle, a market for clothing brands, artists and food, a gallery, a film screening, and after party with punk bands and DJ sets. So large, multi-day jams are still a thing, just in a completely different format to the way they originally started. So, from dawn till dusk training sessions, workshops and conditioning, to multi-day events featuring competitions, performances, and the celebration of parkour culture, that is how parkour jams have changed over the years. As I said earlier, it was all to do with the progression of the sport. A massive thank you to everyone who has helped me with this video, especially as it was a result of a last-minute change. I unfortunately will not be able to publish the video that I promised last month. Join me next time where I'll be looking at the most underrated UK parkour athletes and why you should be keeping an eye on them. See you around.